everyone, I am Dr. Sonal Jain from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. In this series of forensic science lecture, today we are discussing bite marks, which comes under a wide branch of forensic dentistry or forensic odontology. Bite marks are one of the common evidence which are found in various crimes, in various violent crimes. For example, they can be found in the homicides, suicides, or in various sexual assault or rape cases. So, the bite marks are one of the evidence through which we can individualize a person, we can exclude a person, or we can get the investigative leads. Also, depending upon the bite mark which is given by the criminal to the victim, we can assess the behavior of that particular criminal. So, the bite mark could be found on the victim's body, or it could be found on any other object which is present at the crime scene. For example, if the criminal is involved in any other act of eating of any fruit or biting any other thing, there might be chances that we can get a bite or any tooth impressions or the saliva on those objects at the crime scene. And in certain cases, these bite marks are found on the victim's body. So, depending upon which type of tooth are involved in the bite mark, depending upon the intensity of the bite mark, there are certain different types of wounds which are being inflicted through the bite mark. As we have read that the incisors, which are our middle tooth, they are rectangular shaped. Because they are rectangular in shape, they give the rectangular shaped marks through on the bite. These central incisors, they are wider than the lateral incisors. The central incisors are the front middle two teeth which are present in our mouth. Then the next third and fourth tooth are the lateral incisors. The incisors, the central as well as the lateral incisors, they create linear abrasions or lacerations. So, the middle two tooth and the two side tooth, they usually create a wound which is the linear abrasions or the lacerations. Then coming to the fifth and sixth, the four we leave and this side fifth and this side sixth, which are known as the canines, or we can call them as cuspids. They are the most critical teeth for identification because the canines are the sharpest and they produce the deepest and the most clearly defined punctures, or usually they put the triangular shaped bruises. These canines, they are located after the lateral incisors and they are at the corners of the arches. And these are the teeth which are key to measuring the arch width. As we are talking about the bite mark which is being inflicted on the victim's body or any other place by the criminal. So, after incisors and the canines, we have the premolars which we call them as bicuspids. They appear as smaller, rounder bruises or abrasions at the end of the arches, and they are usually less frequently recorded in detail due to their lesser biting force. So, when we say and when we see a bite mark, the most important tooth which we talk about is the central incisors, the lateral incisors and the canines, and after that we have the two premolars, one this side and one this side, which are usually not involved but may be involved in certain cases, but the various lacerations or abrasions, they are given by the central incisors, and the triangular shaped wounds, they are given by the canines, which are most important because the kind of mark they are inflicting is a 3D mark and the person may get a deep cut with that. So, various different identifying features which can help us in identifying a person is the mesial or distal rotation. A tooth which is rotated towards the front or back of the mouth will leave an angled mark. So, these we can call them as the individual characteristics. Every person will have the same structured set. For example, we have the central incisors, the lateral incisors, the canines and the premolars. But what is making this set of the tooth different from one person to another? The differences comes how the placement of teeth are there in the mouth. For example, if we identify a person or individualize a person, we say that the person tooth were laterally forward, the person tooth were laterally backward. So, we usually generally make a statement about that they have a lot of gaping in their tooth or they have a very beautiful set of tooth. So, all this impressions which we are making or the statements which we are making about the set of the tooth of a person, these are the individuals identifying characteristics of the person which helps in the identification of a person. When we say the distal rotation, there we are talking about the tooth which is either the front coming more toward front or the back and will leave an angled mark. Then we talk about the protrusion or retrusion, that a tooth is forward or backward through the normal arch line. So, a bite mark is there and you can see that all the teeth are coming to the one line, but one of the lateral incisor is either falling back or coming towards. So, that is the individual characteristic of the set of the tooth of the person who has left that bite mark, which helps in identifying that particular person. Another important factor is a chip or fracture. A notch in the incisal edge will appear as a corresponding gap or in unique shape in the mark. If there is a corresponding gap or gape or a fracture is there, then we can easily identify the person using that. Another thing which I spoke about is the gap between the teeth. These gap we call as the diastema, and this usually occurs in the upper central incisors. The upper central incisors are the front two teeth and will appear as a clear uninjured space in the pattern. Sometimes we say identify a person that they have the two central incisors there which are both of them coming outward, and then we call it as rabbit tooth. And if that tooth is present, that will give a more impact in the central, and the front two marks which are being inflicted, they could be more deeper. Various unique wear patterns could be there. For example, attrition wear from tooth to tooth contact or abrasion from any external object, which can create a distinct flat or grooved edges. Or any other person, if they are having a false tooth over there or any capping there, then that will leave a different mark on the bite mark pattern. So, all these different identifying features we can see which can help us in the individualization of a person. So, when we classify the bite marks by the injury type, so we say the tooth pressure marks which are directly from the injuries or the pressure of teeth. There could be four things: hemorrhage, or we can call as bruise or contusion. These are subcutaneous bleeding or causing discoloration. We could have a laceration present there, that means there is a tear in the skin. We could have an incision which is a clean or sharp cut. We could have a puncture where a perforation of the skin typically from canines is present. So, depending upon the injuries, we can say that the hemorrhage or a bruise or contusion has been caused, a laceration is there, an incision is there, or a puncture in the skin is present. If we say the central bruise we are talking about from the suction pressure or the negative pressure, then a central bruise will be present on the top arch and the lower arch, and in the middle of that there will be a central blue bruise which will be present, which is because of the tongue. Then we have tooth scrape marks. This is because of the injuries from tooth moving across the skin. So, how does they come? There are two types, abrasion and avulsion. Usually whenever supposedly a criminal is biting a victim or victim is biting the criminal, so other person is trying to remove the person from their body, away from their body. So, in that act the person is trying to bite and other person is removing their hand or their body from the other person. So, in such cases the scraping may occur from the tooth. So, this scraping may result into abrasion and avulsion. This scraping suggests that there was an act of any defense going on between the victim as well as the criminal. If it is present, that means because of the self defense, the victim might have taken, or might have certain conflict between them, which resulted into the tooth scrape marks, which could be in the form of abrasion, that is the scraping of the superficial skin layers, or avulsion, that is the removal of a section of tissue. So, this is on the type of the injury type, by teeth pressure, by the scrape marks, or by the tongue. But when we talk about the degree of certainty, so definitive, when there is no doubt that the injury is a bite mark, it shows a clear distinct arch pattern and various multiple individual characteristics. Then we say this is a definitive bite mark. There could be a probable bite mark. The probable bite mark could be the pattern strongly suggest where the bite mark may have features missing, that only one arch is visible or has significant distortion. So, that mark could be due to the first upper arch of the person, and that mark could be something which might have giving the similar vibe like a bite mark, but it is not a bite mark. So, we will put it in the probable category, that as the half of the mark is missing, it could be a bite mark or could not be a bite mark. So, then after probable we have possible, that the injury has features that could be from teeth, but it could be from other causes, for example a belt buckle, knuckles, etc., and there is a no clear arch form. So, in the probable mark half of the arch is present, but in the possible mark there is no arch is present. Probable is having the probability is higher that the half mark may be present because the criminal could not hold off the victim in such a way that it could give a full mark, or the victim could not hold of the criminal in such a way that they could give a full bite mark. So, in such cases the half is only present, but in the possible there is no arch. Maybe it could be the reasons that the infliction is from other sources, but it could be also of the reason that they did not get the victim might not get the proper space to bite the criminal. So, whenever we are finding the bite marks, we are looking for the bite marks on the crime scene, we have to check the victim's body for any bite mark which could be present there. We have to check the various edible objects at the crime scene where the bite mark might be present. So, we have to collect the various kind of evidences from the bite marks. The first and more important critical step is saliva or DNA swabbing. So, this is the first step after the initial observation, where before any manipulation could be done. So, what we do in such cases, we use a sterile cotton swab which is moistened with distilled water, and we swipe the entire area of the bite mark using a rotation motion. And then we use a second dry swab to collect any remaining moisture. We air dry the swabs and place them in a swab box or paper envelope, not plastic, to prevent mold. So, basically after we have done 2 swabbing, then we have to keep these swabs in a paper bag. Never ever collect any biological evidence in an airtight container. The control swabs could be taken from an adjacent injured area of skin, where we have to establish a baseline DNA profile from the victim. So, whenever we are collecting the swabs, we also have to take a negative control, or we can call it as the negative control swab from the nearby area where the swab is taken. So, whenever we are taking the dental impressions from the suspect, supposedly in a case we have 5 suspects, we have a bite mark. Whenever the bite mark, the area which is inflicted upon it, if it is on the skin of the victim, if it is on any edible object, always take the impressions on a similar object. Like any object which is mimicking the skin, there we will take the dental impression or the bite mark. But before taking the dental impressions, we have to obtain a signed informed consent from the court. And to create the dental impressions, we use high quality dental alginate to take an impression of both upper and lower arches. Before taking the dental impressions, we always have to take the consent from the court to take that. So, how we take this from the suspects? The alginate sets in 2-3 minutes, capturing an exact negative of all teeth, gums and palatal structures. Then we have to cast it. The alginate impression is immediately poured with dental stone to create a hard durable positive model, and these casts are the known standard for comparison. So, the casting is one of the method that if the suspects we have, we take the direct cast from those suspects after obtaining the permission from the court. Then photographing the documentation, we take extraoral and intraoral photographs with and without a scale. So, why this is necessary? This is necessary because we have to know if there are any individual characteristics, if there are any dental process which the criminal might have undergone. So, to take in notice that, we take the extraoral and intraoral photographs with and without a scale to know that this is the specific tooth pattern or the teeth structure of this particular individual. We include various frontal, lateral and occlusal views where we cover the whole mouth of the person. So, casting we have done, we have taken the photographs of the suspects. Then thirdly, we take the bite exemplars. That means the suspect to ask to bite into a suitable material. For example, any dental wax, silicone or even a foam pad to record their dynamic bite pattern in a controlled setting where multiple exemplars are taken. So, we say to give them a soft bite and to give them a very hard bite. Then after this we take their saliva samples of the suspects and then they can be matched with the saliva samples or the DNA which is being extracted, which is found at the crime scene or from the victim's body. So, this is about the evidence which we are taken or the known samplers we are taken from the suspects. But at the crime scene, what we have to do? We have to go for the proper forensic photography. The equipment which we mostly use is the DSLR camera with a macro lens of around 100 mm with ring flash or external flashes, and there is a forensic ABFO number 2 scale. So, firstly we take photographs without scale overview, that a full body shot and a mid-range shot showing the bite marks anatomical location is taken. Then with scale at the 90-degree angle, we take the ABFO scale which is placed on the same plane as the bite mark, and the camera lens must be perfectly perpendicular to the mark to eliminate any perspective distortion. So, one photograph with scale overview, one with scale at a 90-degree angle. Many shots we can take with the oblique lighting. The single most important technique is to flash is held at a very low angle of around 5 to 15 degrees to the skin, and in such cases the casting shadows in the depression of the bite marks where a contrast is being made, and we can have the various contrast and subtle features visible which is not visible in the normal lighting. So, many photographs are taken in the oblique lighting. A series of shots could be taken in various different directions, that 12, 3, 6 and 9 o'clock positions. That means a bite mark can be covered overall from a 360-degree view where it has a upper arch and a lower arch taken from all the different directions. To go with that, we have the alternate light source photography where we can use alternative light sources. Ultraviolet sources can be used where we can reveal latent bruising, subcutaneous hemoglobin that is not visible on the surface. Infrared we can use which can penetrate the skin, and we can see the deeper vascular patterns and bruising which has faded away from the skin, which is present inside the lower skin. So, after completing the photography, we lift the 2D impressions and the 3D impressions. For 2D impressions, there is a transparent acetate sheets which have a low tack adhesive. So, that sheet we press it over the bite mark and onto the braided skin surface, and we lift the microscopic skin cells, saliva residue and the 2D patterns of the aberration. This can reveal various small details like the individual enamel edges. For the 3D impressions, we take the preservation and the casting. High resolution vinyl polysilicone impression material, for example, the microsil is taken. So, what we do in such cases, firstly where the bite mark is present, we clean that area and a releasing agent is applied. The low viscosity material is mixed and carefully flowed over the bite mark, which ensure it penetrates every detail. So, when the mixture is present, they go inside the 3D and a cast is being maintained. Once this is set, the flexible and accurate negative mold is peeled off, and the negative is then filled with a high grade dental stone to create a permanent positive 3D model of the bite mark. So, this is a negative because whatever we have the depths, that comes now as the over impressions. So, this can also be compared with the bite marks of the suspects which we are having. In other cases where the post-mortem thing is there and we have to go for the tissue preservation, if the victim is dead, the entire area of skin containing the bite mark can be excised and then it is fixed to a rigid support and preserved in 10% formalin solution. This allows for direct long-term examination and analysis without the degradation that occurs in the living tissue. So, after that we have taken the evidences from the crime scene. Now we have to identify and compare. So for that, the odontologists, they creates a detailed diagram or a digital overlay of the bite mark, tracing the arch dimensions, tooth positions and all individual characteristics. Then we have to analyze it with the suspect's dentition. The same process is performed on the suspect's dental cast and they create a known standard overlay. So now we have the analysis of the bite mark from the crime scene and one side we have from the suspect's dentition. Then we have to go for the comparison technique. Either the suspect's dental cast is physically placed next to a 1:1 photograph and then we can compare directly. Another is that we can compare over top of each other, where drawing the biting edges on the acetate and laying it over the photograph, then digitally we can scan it in the Adobe Photoshop or specialized forensic programs where they can see together over the top of each other. Or in the most common program, the new state of the art technology, the softwares are used to digitally superimpose the 3D scan of the suspect's dental cast onto the 2D or 3D image of the bite marks, which allow for the metric analysis and the assessments of the fit, whether this bite mark is a proper fit or not. So depending upon what kind of photographs we have from the crime scene and what kind of scans we have taken, observed from the various different suspects, then we can use different technologies for the analysis. So what after this comparison, what we can conclude and report from this, that if there is a non-match, that means the person is excluded from that. If the insufficient evidence is there to form an opinion, we call it as an inclusive. If the suspect could be the source, but there are no characteristic matches, that it is class characteristics only present, then we can call it as a possible biter. If there is a correspondence of several classes and some minimal individual characteristics are there, but it falls short of certainty, then we call it as a probable biter. If there is a high degree of correspondence of multiple unique characteristics with no unexplained disappearances, then we can say with a reasonable medical certainty that this is the person whose bite mark is present over there. Identified as the biter, this term is now strongly discouraged and largely replaced by reasonable medical certainty due to its absolute and potentially misleading nature. So, conclusively, we could not call that this is identified as the biter. Whenever we are reporting this in the forensic report in the court of the law, we say with the reasonable medical certainty, we can say that this person could be the biter who has inflicted this bite mark upon the victim during this crime. Whenever we have half evidence or we have evidence which is not probable, then we should not maintain the statements. Now, the famous Ted Bundy case, which we have spoke before also, where the Lisa Levi's buttock found a combination of abrasion and contusions, and we have found that the oblique lighting which clearly showed the irregularity and misalignment of the biter's teeth. So through that we have identified the Ted Bundy's set of teeth, that he was the person with the reasonable medical, that this person has the one who has inflicted these bite marks on the Lisa Levi. This is one of the famous cases which has landmarked the opinion or landmarked the taken away of the bite marks as a very important evidence in the forensic scientists. In the case of the forensic science, where we have considering the bite marks as an important evidence. Here the Dr. Richard, he was the key odontologist and who did not claim the teeth matched perfectly. Instead, he used a pedagogical approach in court. He first showed the jury the bite mark photo, then Bundy's teeth and pointed out the unique features. For example, a specific chip and the alignment of the teeth that were replicated in the mark, and the compelling visual comparison was devastating to the defense and which proved that the Ted Bundy was involved in such case. So now when we say that a person was being identified on the bite mark case, there might be a case where the person might be convictedly wrong. So that was the case of Ray Cron, where it was a flawed evidence. The bite mark on the victim was a bruise, a diffuse injury without any defined edges, and the key evidence was a supposed unique alignment of the teeth. Because of the flawed analysis, the initial experts incorrectly interpreted the mark and the later stated that the distortion of the skin on the breast made precise analysis nearly impossible. They overinterpreted class characteristics as individual ones, but after Cron's conviction, DNA testing was performed on the saliva and it was likely present on the bite mark, and the DNA excluded Cron and matched with another man, Kenneth Phillips. So, we say that if we have particular probable evidence through which we can confirmly say that this evidence confirmed that this is the person who has inflicted this bite mark on the particular victim, then we should say or we can individualize the person. But there are certain legal responsibilities we should take, that to obtain a dental impression, the victim must provide consent. They should give the impression of a verbal request. Some require search warrants to be obtained, and once request is granted, then impressions are made and cast in dental stones. So, conclusively, if collected properly, photography is done properly, evidence is collected properly, then we can make a conclusive result that it could be the biter. Thank you.